Get ready for real conversations, fresh insight, and practical strategies to help you run and grow your shop with confidence. From tackling everyday challenges to scaling with data-driven decisions, this podcast brings you stories and solutions straight from the people who've been there. This is Beyond the Bay, and I'm your host, Peter Cooper. A little bit about me. My journey in the industry started 25 years ago. I grew up on a small farm in Iowa, fixing the equipment, and I always had a passion for the mechanical side of things, way more than dealing with plants or animals. And that later on turned into a career of being a diesel mechanic, where I became ASE Master Certified. I then turned that into my own business. I grew a shop from a very small parking lot in a very small two-street town in Iowa to a multi-million-dollar operation, where I later on was able to sell that and merge with a larger operation. Now, currently, I am the brand ambassador for Full Bay, and I also am the CEO and founder of Ascend Consulting. And today I have a special guest with me, Mark Hagen. And Mark and I have a little bit of a history. He was actually one of the managers at one of my locations in Illinois. Mark, welcome to the show today. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your history? How did you get into this industry?
Wow, thanks for the invite, Peter. I was really looking forward to this. So, how I got into the industry? Well, I was young and I was dumb. So, it was out of eighth grade. Things were different when I was younger. You could start working at 14. And I started working at a gas station pumping gas. Back then, there was no self serve, it was you know, all full serve. My brother was already a mechanic there. And I was just always kind of watching the guys work on stuff, and I thought it was just cool. So within a couple of short years after that, I'm going to say I was probably a sophomore, probably maybe even a junior in high school, I became a mechanic. I naturally absorbed the love of fixing stuff. And it was more than just cars. It was just fixing anything. There was the satisfaction inside of me that, like, oh, this is cool. It was this, now it's this, and it works great. I think for a lot of mechanics, it's almost like craftsmanship. We love what we do. Okay. So then, um, I was 21. My brother was 24, and I remember him going to me, go, "Hey, the guy paid us very well. He did. It was a Greek guy, took very good care of us. But my brother goes, hey, why don't we do this for ourselves?" Like, oh, okay. So we found this gas station in Elmwood Park. That's where I still live till today. Great town, by the way. And we bought this gas station at North Avenue in 76. It was a local gas station. Again, it pretty much still had full serve there back in the day. And we bought an underperforming gas station. It was pumping 60,000 gallons a month. Now, this is the year 1987. And we brought this gas station because, well, first of all, let me back up a little bit. I was still living at home. My brother was maybe just getting married. Okay. And, matter of fact, he wasn't married. But I was still living at home. And we just loved to work. So we brought this gas station from 60,000 gallons to 200,000 gallons. And we did it probably within a couple of years. Well, big corporations love that. They love when you're selling their product. So we made a deal on 2 more gas stations, Peter. So now I'm probably 24. Yeah, 24, maybe 25. 3 gas stations, 30 employees. Man, we were rocking and rolling. It was great. We were busy. Things were looking really good until you looked at the checkbook. Well, let me tell you, being busy doesn't mean you're making money. Man, I was going to gas stations delivering pop and making sure the cashiers were counting the cigarettes, bringing the paperwork back, grabbing the money out of the safe and going to the bank. It was wonderful. But after maybe another 7 years of doing that, I don't know, it was 1996. So yeah, it was in there for a little bit. My brother, I remember him going to me. He goes, "I'm tired." He's got a family going. I got a family going. We're struggling. We didn't have a whole lot going on. He goes, "I'm tired. I want out. I want to do something. You know what I mean? Just wants to fix cars, and he was very good at it, and still is. He's still working on cars. He's very good at it. Um, I had a different vision. I just saw things differently. So I'm like, you know what? I bought a little repair shop. We sold off all the gas stations. I bought a little shop. It was a makeshift repair shop. You had to pull in through the alley. Dark, dingy when I bought the place. There had to be, if you can envision a dime store, just a small store with a little entrance in the back you can pull a car in. Dark, dingy. I bought it from another guy. He probably had 150 old, used, dusty tires in the front window, big glass windows. Put this vision. There's a couple of light bulbs lighting up the work area. The floors, oh, you'd stick on them when you walked across it. Old carpeting in the front that smelled like sour grease. So put that vision. Okay, so my Amico training from the day, the first thing you want to do in any business, clean it up, light it up. So I did that. Threw out all the old tires. And I remember the old owner went nuts. Well, you throw out money. I'm like, throw out more than money. But I cleaned it up. I lit it up, made it pretty. As good as I could do with what I had. And the business grew. It grew. But then there were still struggles because you're cultivating something from nothing. Um, One of my famous stories, I got to share this one. It was, I bought that building in 97, 98. My wife walks in the door. She goes, honey, we got to talk. Oh, Peter, I can tell you, whenever your wife says, honey, we got to talk, her next words coming out of her mouth are not going to be great. She goes, now she had a smile on her face. She goes, well, I'm pregnant. Like, oh, okay. Well, I already had two kids. The third was a surprise. And I go, well, honey, I got to tell you this, that because we couldn't afford $100 a month, I was still struggling at the time. Couldn't afford $100 a month for the maternity coverage. Back then, you had to get separate coverage. So I go, well, all right. My business banking account on the high end, $2,000, and it wouldn't be uncommon to drop down to negative 800. It wasn't uncommon. So I'm like, well, it is what it is. I'll deal with tomorrow what I can get here. This is a constant. I cannot change what I have. Okay. Tomorrow came. We went up to a wedding kind of far away. Getting ready to sit down for dinner at this wedding. My pager goes off. There was no cell phones. My father-in-law pages me. He's stuck in water in Elmwood Park. Oh, we had a bad rainstorm. Our house happened to be one of the lowest houses for blocks. I go, we got to go. So we got back home. The fire department curtained off, yellow taped off the whole block. Our house is trashed. Okay, great. Maybe I got $2,000 in my bank account. House is trashed. Wife is pregnant. Don't know how to pay for it. Okay, what am I going to say? Well, I can't control that. That's a constant. I'll deal with that tomorrow when it comes. Well, tomorrow came, and family came. We cleaned out the house. We had Christian charities help us pay for the pregnancy. I think they paid half, and then I went on a payment plan for another 5 years. Business got busier. So that's, I'll move beyond that. Business got busier. And how I made the changes. One day I'm sitting at my desk and I'm looking at these numbers in front of me. This is when I started really getting dialed into numbers. Numbers are everything. Numbers don't lie. Okay? And I'm staring at this piece of paper and I started pretty good with Excel. So I started working with Excel and I made something called the break-even calculator. Back then, it was in the very infancy of its thing. So I just put in my parts. How much money am I making on my parts? Okay. What is my labor? Oh, okay. This is my labor rate. What does it cost? What is my overhead? And it was maybe 5 or 6 different items that are in there, and I started calculating it out. I'm like, oh, now I know how much it takes me to make $1. All right. Not long after that, I went to this seminar by Mitch Schneider, and I listened to him talk, which I was telling you about earlier, and he really inspired me. So I was so excited. I ran home. I ran back to the shop. I grabbed a copy of my break-even calculator. I showed it to him. He looked at it and he laughed, and he had this. I still remember this crazy chuckle he had. He goes, "Change this, change that, and it's going to make a world of difference." And I did that, and I started making money. Oh man, it was great. So the little shop started getting busier and busier, and then it just wasn't everything I wanted. I always pointed in a direction. If you point, I want to go here, you're going to have a direction. I always wanted to have 3 stores. I wanted to be that's what just why my goal was. Well, one day, I had an opportunity to buy another shop. And this is the Melrose Park location. And we talked, this was before the crash of '08. We talked, we negotiated, we came up the price. He agreed to it. I'm going to buy this store. It was a lot more money I wanted to spend, but I knew my numbers and I can make this work. Okay, I saw what his numbers were and I figured I applied my ratios to that. This can work. Well, at the end of the day, he walked away on the deal. I was crushed. I'm like, I failed. I really took it to heart and I failed. Well, so I kept on working, but I always watched what was going on at that other location. And then maybe another year or two went by.
So did he end up keeping it? He didn't sell it to anybody then? He just kept doing
No,
his
he
own thing?
ended up keeping it at the price point. But then what happened? '08 happened. Everything crashed. So I knocked on his door again. Hey, there was a couple other financials I was keeping my eye on, and I could see he was really struggling. So I knocked on his door again, and we rekindled our conversation, and ended up doing an acquisition and buying it. So the price was probably half of where we started. Great, rocking and rolling. So now I had 2 locations. I applied everything I knew, but I also went to a school to learn management strategies that we talked about before. Back in the day, it was called Management Success. I think they turned it to Drive, which you also went there too. They took what I had, I should say, I took what they had. I made a hybrid system of what I learned and I put it together and I made even a bigger break even calculator. It was amazing. It that break even calculator takes the fear out of hiring people. It takes the fear out of running a business because again, numbers don't lie, you
Right.
know, and you can really tweak things. It's really amazing if you create 1 percentage point on a part margin or put in a sweet curve over here, how much everything extends. It
It
was
does.
amazing.
Little differences make huge. And it's one of the things I talk to clients about too. I said, if we look at your finances, I'm talking about people's personal finances. I talk to
Yeah.
employees a lot about this. I said, look, guys, it's not the car payment that's killing you. It's all the trips to the gas station. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
just the opposite for business. It's not the big ticket items where you're not making money. Where you're not
Yeah.
making money is all the little things. You're not charging enough for nuts and bolts. You're not charging for every zip tie. You're just
Right.
not maximizing what you can. And that's where a lot of the big margins come from is all the little stuff really adds up quick.
It does, Peter. The people don't look at what a nut and a bolt is on a daily operation, but step back, look what it is in a month. And then not only just look at what it costs you for the nut, look what you could have made on it, the profitability on that. Now that turns into a
Right.
number. I'm not talking thousands and thousands, but it can be over a
Yeah, but
year.
$100 here and $100 there a week add up to a lot of money, at the
Yeah,
end of the month and at the end of the
sure
year.
does.
If you can
It,
make an
it-
extra 50 or if you can make an extra $1,000 a week in
yeah,
in sales, that's $52,000 a year.
right. Again, it's a number. Don't Again, fear is the thief for success. Don't be afraid to charge. Now, I'm not saying you have to over embellish, but it's okay to charge for it. You paid for it.
Well, right. And I think the big part of that is people have this feeling that I'm taking advantage of people. And let's face it, you're not. You're here to make
No,
money. I
yeah,
don't know that I've never seen a hospital that was apologetic that they were able to keep their doors open tomorrow because they charged enough, to people to keep the doors
Right.
open and pay their staff a good wage.
Yeah,
And
and not
I
only
think
that,
when it
and
comes
not
to
only
parts and what you
yeah,
charge, people have to absolutely look at it as you're not overcharging people if they're willing to pay it. I've never had Louis Vuitton publicly go on TV and say we're taking advantage of people because we charge $1,000 for a purse.
right. People will want to always spend money on a want. They don't want to spend money on a need. I want a big 100-inch TV, but I don't want to put brakes on my car. That's so
Well,
true.
I've seen
You
some
know,
lessons like that even with dealing with owner operators and truck drivers. You see that a lot.
oh, so true.
You'll
You
you'll
know,
have the
and
biggest piece of crap truck pull into the shop, and
yeah.
I mean I'll never forget. This is a crazy story. I'm standing there working on a truck,
Hmm.
fixing the air conditioning of this completely just crazily bad truck. And the driver refuses to drive it because the air conditioning doesn't work. And I'm standing there working on it, and the tires are so bad, the steel cords are poking me in the leg as I'm working on it.
Oh
And they
God,
refuse to put tires on it. So sometimes that really goes to show that,
it's
which is another
ridiculous.
example. Yeah, people don't charge enough to work on air conditioning, by the way, because it's a creature comfort that drivers now refuse to drive the truck without it. I do have a question for you about
Yeah,
fear.
yeah.
How do you recognize as a business owner that you're making a decision out of fear and not basing it on facts?
It's a great question, Peter. How do you make? Well, you just don't make your decision on fear. It's okay to feel emotional, but facts and numbers don't lie, Peter. They don't. So you look at your numbers again. You got to have everything laid out in that. Like I say, I use my spreadsheet. I use that break-even calculator. That allow me to make a decision. Don't make decisions out of fear. No, you can make an educated. You can it can be an educated decision. I'm going to take. It's called risk. I'll make an educated risk on something, and that's fine. And I've done that twice. It's scary, but fear is more of an emotion. Does that make sense? I'm I'm afraid to jump in the hot water, but I'm gonna take a risk because now I looked at that water and it's actually lukewarm. So it's a calculated chance, not just jumping in the hot water.
Right. And it kind of
That's
reminds
what
me of
we're looking for.
kind of a concept there's a book I read. It's called The Gap and the Gain by a guy named Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan. They co-wrote it. Fear is one of those things where I think it's okay to be in fear
Oh,
because
right.
you're not a human if you don't. So don't ignore that emotion. But you need to limit how long you live in that zone. Like, okay, do something, be in fear, be shocked, and then solve it with facts and not feelings. And I think one of the things, a good example of that is when people are afraid to charge for parts. Well, I can't
Yeah,
charge that. My customers will leave. Is that really a fact or is that a feeling? Because how do you know what people are willing to pay until you try? And then when you
right.
try, are you really documenting? Because it's kind of like the shop supplies. I used to have a lot of service writers that come to me and say, nobody wants to pay shop supplies. I said, okay, well, who is nobody? And they'd say, well, so and so. I said, okay, well, let's keep a list of all the people that push back on it. We'll use some data, we'll use some facts, we'll find out. It was
Right.
only one person, but in their mind, it was everybody. And I think people have to be really cautious of that when they manage humans, is that you really need to start replacing some of these feelings they have with facts. So keep track of it. Keep track of your
Oh, yeah.
pushback. If you're not tracking your lost sales, you're missing out on a huge data point.
So true. So true. Really is. You know, when you're creating a business, you really need to look ahead because you're at the end of the day, we can't do this forever, Peter. There has to be an exit. There has to be a finality, which I finally reached. When you're creating a business, you want to create something that somebody else wants. Okay, if you have a dark, dingy shop, who's going to look at that? People are going to pass by. If you make a shop clean and lighted up and pretty, where a woman is comfortable to walk in, oh, you did a good job. You know,
I think the
um,
same thing's true with employees. I
very
ask
true.
owners of shops all the time. I said, "Why would someone want to come work for you?" And they look at me like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, let's use me as an example. I'm a 25 plus year master technician, still have my
Yeah,
certificates.
Yeah.
Why would I want to come work for you? Why would I not want to go work for Rush Truck Centers down the street? That's a big
Right.
multinational company, has billions of dollars behind them, well lit, perfect environment. And it's the why thing. It's the same way with your customers. Why do your customers come to you? Why do they come to you and not the dealer? And if
Right.
honestly, if you don't know the answer to that, that's dangerous because you need to know what makes you special so you can sell it. Because let's face it, we all do the same thing our competition does. We fix things, whether it's cars or trucks or excavators, we all fix stuff. What makes us different? It's how we do it. And I think so
Service.
many owners don't understand what makes them special.
No, it's so true. It's service. It's making it personal. You know, the charm of my facility is I got to know every customer. When a new customer walked in, I would personally go up there, meet and greet them. Hi, how are you? Get to know them. Because
Right.
you know what, big corporations, they're not doing that. Hey, Frank, how are you? How the kids doing? Oh, getting married? Congratulations. So important. So important. You know. Um, but yeah, you need to, if you're a bird flying overhead, are you going to look down at that building? What grabs your eye? Very important.
Yeah, I think that brings in a point. One of the most eye opening experiences I ever had as an owner was a bird's eye view, if you will. And I was standing in a man lift working on the lighting in my shop because I've always been really big about got to have a lot of light. Can't have too much
Yeah,
light, no such thing. I want to be able to tan in that thing. And
yeah,
I'm standing in the man lift, and I don't know what I'm 17 feet in the air, and I start looking down, and I'm like, I have this epiphany. We've got to schedule the bays. You can't just schedule the text. The bay has value. And the point of that is that I actually do this exercise with business owners. I said, look, we're going to take a drone, we're going to fly it around your shop, around your lot, and tell me that it doesn't change your perspective on your business. Because as owners, it's just like people with the funk in their car. We become immune to things. We become immune to what it looks like at the back of the shop. You know, when a customer walks in, can that
oh,
customer see your oil lube rack and it's dirty and dingy and there's oil spilled everywhere and there's stains on the floor? Is that what they see?
yeah. Clean it up, light it up. It's so important. And they feel if they walk into a clean shop, they must be professional. They're going to do a great job. You're setting the tone scale for the customer if they see crap on the floor.
Right. Well, and you
You
attract
know,
the wrong clients and the wrong employees. I tell this to people all the time. If you're a dingy, disorganized shop, you are going to attract dim, unorganized employees. And
yep.
if you're this takes me back to my very first job I had off the farm. I worked for this company called TMC, and the nickname of this company was Too Much Chrome. It's called the
Uh,
McAl Corporation. It's one of the largest flatbed haulers in the United States now. And I walk into this place at 16 years old, and I grew up on a farm, and I grew up on an animal farm, so everything was always dirty. My brother was horribly disorganized. Everything was a mess. And this place, I'm not kidding you, you could eat off the floor. And
nice.
you found out really quick, watching people come and watching them go, as far as employees go, that the disorganized slobs did not last very long in that industry because they got pushed out because the culture didn't allow for it. I mean, if you got done and that bay of that shop was not, I'm not
Yeah,
kidding, eat off it clean,
right.
you were absolutely like pushed out the door. And that was a culture thing. And I think a lot of shop owners don't think about that culture. And you really don't have to manage people. You don't have to push them when you have a culture that doesn't allow for that. They will self-police each other. Because I guarantee you
Mhm.
that lead tech, that guy that's been there 20 years, is not going to put up with some lube tech that's a slob.
No, no way. No way. Um,
So, question for you.
yes.
We've talked about fear.
Yeah.
Along with fear, what is your opinion of failure? Like, how do you handle failures in your business? I mean, we all have our stepping stones, is what I call them, the things that we had to get over to
Oh, I
get
had a
where we're
few.
at. Tell me about maybe an experience about that, and how did you deal with the fear, and how did you overcome it?
Man, those fears are not, well, it's not so much, you mean failures or fears?
Well, I mean, failure and fear are kind of the same thing. I mean, when you fail, you have this big fear of, oh my God, I'm going to keep failing. So, how when you have this big setback, what do you do to push forward?
Well, Peter, I hate to say I little bit disagree with you on that. Fear and failure are not the same. I have failed one great, had one big failure, I should say. And I wasn't afraid because I knew the direction I was going to keep going. Was I guess I, I was concerned. So when I had two locations going, Peter, my mistake I made was the second location, the big place in Melrose. I was sucking the life out of the first place. All the customers came to me because it was me. They liked the way I did things, so they kept migrating. Now the other location was only what 3 4 miles away, so it's an easy drive. So I slit the throat of the first place, and business kept dropping and dropping. So that was a mistake.
Do you think
I
they were too
wanted,
close together? That in other
yeah,
words, your stores competed against each other?
they did. Well, the reason the name on the door was Hagen's, so there's a reason why they went to me and they migrated over to the bigger location. But not only that, my mistake was I hired the wrong people to manage that store. That was the mistake. I was converting into a transmission repair facility. After about a year of doing that, the person I hired, two for me, one for you, sales were dropping. People were not happy with the service. I went in there on a Friday. I locked the door. I go, we're done here, people. Because now I have a controlled expense. I know what the taxes are. I know what the electric bill is going to be. That's a known expense. I can quantify that. So I closed the door and I sold the building about a year and a half later. And then I just rolled everything back into the one big shop, and it was blue skies since. So fear, though, that's a bad thing to go to bed with, and it's a bad thing to wake up with because it's always sitting. And when I go back to my early days that I was telling you about, when my wife was pregnant and the house was flooded, that was fear. You go to bed with it; it's horrible. Um, I just focused I just paid really close attention to numbers, and I knew it's going to be okay. I just knew it. I had a vision of what I wanted, and I kept marching forward. Yeah, there were hiccups, but at the end of the day, focus on a number. They don't lie. It'll tell you what needs to be changed. Do I need to do more marketing? How are you going to do the marketing? What are other people doing? It was, I think, in a way for me, easier to make my mark than it is for today's repair shops. Back in my early days, the internet wasn't even there. Or it was, but barely. You had to rely on yellow pages, and oh, that costs some money. You know, Today you can be savvy and do some good marketing and look at your analytics on the internet and everything else, so you can kind of tweak it there. But I think I have more of a pond, or we have more of a big lake to compete with because of the internet. We rely more on, well, we did too back then. We relied on the word of people talking and sharing. Hey, go to Hagen's. That's a place to go to. So fear, don't confuse it with failure because I really think failure is not good, but don't let fear cloud your judgment.
Well, and I think that's one of the things what I was trying to get at is that when you do have a failure, people look at that and they don't say it's an isolated incident and they become burned by it. In other words, they fear it moving forward instead of taking that experience and learn from it and saying, had I done something different, I would have been just fine. And now this is a
Yeah,
learning. In other words, you can take a negative and turn it into a positive by saying, look, I learned from this experience and it's
right.
okay to fail. Like I'm still here. I'm
It
still in
is.
business. I had a setback. It's okay. Everybody has
Right.
setbacks. You
Yeah.
lose. Probably one of the worst feelings I've ever had in business the day I walked into my store and my general manager said, well, I'm quitting. And I'm
Well,
like, I just had this thing running. Everything was good. We were really making progress. And then, one of your key employees quits on you, or you lose your best tech, or
yeah.
you lose a massive customer. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we all
Mm-hmm.
have those setbacks.
Right. Again, learn from it. And I did. You know, yeah, the failure is not a bad thing as long as you learn from it, and grow from it. Yeah, so then in moving forward, one day I get this phone call. I think now my total time in business with 37 years, I get a phone call from this company. Hey, do you want to sell? Why would I want to sell? Business is good, and making money. We're doing good. Matter of fact, the whole business and building, and it was a big place. I mean, I had rental income over there. Was 5 tenants that also rented part of the building from me. And why would I want to sell? I go, no, it's not for sale. And then I thought about it, Peter. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Never leave any stone unturned. Don't. Always look to see what's there. I called them back and I go, listen, I own the building and everything else. If you want to sign a 10 or a 15-year lease, you can buy the business and pay the rent. And they go, no, we want it all. I go, all's not for sale. It's not going to happen because that rental income is also part of my retirement. So then a few days came back. I think they called me back. There's a longer story involved here. And they go, just so you know, this is the number we plan on wanting to start at. I'm like, hmm, okay, let me think about it, keeping a poker face on. And I go, well, I call them back. I guess you got a seat at the table. We can continue the talk. And then we agreed on the number, and it was a decent number. It was a good number. And at the end of the day, I closed the books on my life's work 37 years of excitement, of fear, of craziness, of sleepless nights. And there is not one thing I would change, even though I had failures, because those failures and all these other things, it made me and my business who I am. It was a great run. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point about um, some of the things I'm seeing in the industry, some of the trends, which is mergers and acquisitions. There's a lot of private
Yeah.
equity money out there floating around. And I think so many owners are never ready for that because they think they're building some legacy. And
No.
that's absolutely fun and admirable to have that. But I firmly believe that everything has to be for sale. You are in business. This is
Yeah.
not your personal
Don't.
family heirloom. It's not a memento that it's not like, grandma's wedding ring that you're passing down. It has to be a business. Business is
Don't
business,
get emotionally. Yep.
and
Don't
you
get
cannot be
emotionally
emotional
attached.
about it and attached that way. And so that's one of the things I strongly encourage people. And it was probably, I had a very similar experience. Um, I had been in a management group and I had sought outside coaching and help because I knew that I didn't know the numbers. I knew at the time that, I was working my butt off. I didn't understand why at the end of the week there wasn't money in the bank. Like you just,
Yeah.
you had this mentality. It's kind of like what they tell you in school. Well, if you work really hard, you'll be successful. That's crap. No, you won't. You have to be smart. I know, I
Yeah.
know. I've got family members, and I'm going to throw them under the bus. My brother is the busiest person I know that never gets anything done. And people, I think they confuse busy with profitability and successful. And the same thing comes with selling the business. You do not know. Let's look at it from another avenue. You do not know when some life changing event will happen. No one can predict when they're going to get in a car wreck and get hurt. No one can predict when they have a heart attack and God forbid you die and your wife is stuck with the shop. If you're
Oh,
not in a position to sell at any given moment of life, what are you leaving someone else to deal with? And I think a
and
lot of
you're right.
shop owners need to think about it that way. Like you have to
And then
have your
not
stuff
only that,
straight.
you're right. And not only that, that you also need which I realized there are progressions of business stages. And I never realized that until somebody told me that when I went to, management success, they laid it out a way. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. There's a lot of things they said made sense. So, when you first start out in your business, your phase one, if you don't know there's five or four, I think it was 5 stages, how can you grow? Stage one, you go in there, you're turning wrenches, you're a mechanic, you're a business owner, you're doing the payroll, that's level one. Level two, you decide, hey, I got to hire a mechanic and help me do this. So you're level two, you're working on cars, you got another mechanic, you got something, you're paying him, you're answering the phones, you're talking to the customers, you're writing the tickets, you're paying the bills, you're doing it all. That's level two. Level three, if I remember right, you decide to remove yourself as being a mechanic. You take yourself out of production. Oh, okay. Now I'm paying the two mechanics. You got to replace yourself. Now I'm paying the two mechanics, but I'm taking care of the customers. I'm working the counter. I'm paying the bills, doing the payroll. That's level 3. Level 4, you remove yourself from the counter. You hire a service advisor, but now you got to look at the number. What can a service writer produce to accompany the two mechanics? There's an equation there. Okay, now I got to hire a third mechanic and a service advisor, but I'm going to help him when he's loaded. That's level 4.
Right.
Level 5, I consider myself 4.5. I never completely removed myself, but but I like being there. I loved being there. And we're going to talk about love and passion in a minute. They're two different things. I was never passionate about my business. So I made it to 4.5. I worked till 12, 1 o'clock. I went in the morning. I talked to the customers, had some coffee. I had a lot of fleet work. I enjoyed doing that. But then I had everybody that had their job, and they had their job because there was flow. Everything had an order that it flowed from, and it works. It really did. And that gave me my freedom. It allowed me not to be a slave to my business. You went into business for a better life, not to become a slave. And you got to remember that. 5 progressions of a business, you got to focus towards getting to that.
I think a lot of business owners too, they don't know why they went into business. They forgot. If you really get down to the nitty gritty, there's actually some psychology behind this, why entrepreneurs do what they do. Part of it is risk. We're all risk takers in some form or another.
Of
Um,
course.
the other thing is very few will admit this, but if you really dig deep, at some point you thought you could do it better than someone else. You thought you had some secret sauce that was going to make you successful, or you had some kind of a cutting edge.
Yeah.
And that's usually why people make the leap. I mean, not everybody, some people are forced into it, but we all have a reason, and I think we lose sight of that. I know that my whole quest, mine started in 2008. I had just bought this, and I had a business. I started my first business when I was 21, but we had bought this gorgeous property in 2008 during the housing crash. Never would have been able to
Mm-hmm.
afford this gorgeous acreage, 3 acres on pavement, highway access, just separate outbuilding with its own driveway where I could take my bus company and it could run separate. I was, my wife was pregnant with her first child. Things were looking great. 2008 crash happens. I lose my job. You want to talk
Man.
about fear? I just bought a new house that we could barely afford.
Yep.
It was
Yep.
barely afforded. I had this little tiny small business that was doing okay, but it was nothing special. And then first child's born, and I'm laid off.
Oh, wow.
And you find out really, really carefully or really fast, if you're careful and you reflect, that you're capable is so much more than what you think you are. You really don't know what you're capable of until you're pushed to that. And the thing is in life, people can either push themselves or they can wait for life to happen to them. But either way, you're going to get pushed. The difference is if you push yourself, when things that are outside of your control pop up, it's not a big deal. It's okay.
Yeah, right.
Because now life is on
Right.
your terms and not, fate's terms. And I told my wife, I said, you know what? This limo bus company thing, I'm just going to stay home. We've got a kid. We already budgeted. We'll save on daycare. I literally was a stay at home dad for 6 months and ran a business. My son was 6 months old in a car seat, sitting next to me on the ground, and I'm under the hood of a bus, working on it. And that's how
Wow.
I grew a business. And what it really came down to was I pushed through with hard work and I got through the tough times, but I
Sure.
didn't understand financials. Like I had no idea what a P&L was. I didn't learn that in high school. I kind of tell my children I wish you'd take accounting because even though it's dry, it's very important. And you can learn those skills. I mean, it's not hard. I'd say it's a little easier to learn skills now than it was even when I was younger because you're right. I mean, the answer to everything's right at your fingertips. You just pull your phone out. What's a P&L? Well, heck, now
Oh,
AI will do it for you and it'll tell you the answer.
oh
You
my
don't even have
God,
to
Peter.
search for the information.
I gotta okay, I gotta tell you funny. Me and Grok, my, my wife's starting to call her my girlfriend. This AI is crazy. I had this conversation when I want to know some data or do data acquisition. I talk to Grok, it talks back, and of course I got to make the nice British accent to it because it just sounds really cool. But AI, this is the beginning of it, and it's good data. It is. Now, don't use it as the gospel, but it's good data, and it's easily accessible. So that's another thing. how are customers going to adapt to that? Because you say you're going to need an ABC repair, they're going to be knocking up AI. Welcome to the new normal. It's
I
going to
don't think
happen.
we know. I don't think anybody knows what it's going to be like because no one's thinking like that. Very few people ever put themselves in the mindset of a customer. What's the
Oh, you have
customer going to do? I mean, here's a perfect example. If you put your labor rates on your work orders, the customer's going to search the internet and be like, well, so and so charges different. So I
Yep.
tell owners, stop making it about money. Stop giving them all these things that are objections. You're literally piling up the objections for them. You just need to
Correct.
just take it to them and say, look, you have a problem. I have the solution. Here's the price. I can have it done tomorrow.
Right. Right. No, don't put the labor rate on the ticket. That isn't needed. You know, um, if somebody asks me how come it's so much money, well, all you got to do is say, well, because that's what it costs to keep the doors open. That's the cost of operation. And another thing, oh my gosh, I'm glad you brought that up. When a repair shop says, well, the guy down the block, he's doing $10 oil changes and then he's doing brake jobs for $60, whatever the magic number is. I can't charge that because look what he's charging. Is this a race to the bottom? Do you know if he's making money? You don't know. All I know, what I can tell you is my numbers are this, and I base my profitability based on what I know to be true. And don't compete. If this isn't a race to see who can go out of business first. Maybe the guy's closing his door next week. You don't know that. Do you want to follow him?
Or maybe he inherited the business from his father and he has no overhead and he's not paying a mortgage. At the end of the day, you're absolutely right. It has nothing to do with your competition because those numbers aren't your
No,
numbers. And the
they're
way
not
I
yours.
tell people is let's think about it this way. If you were going to build a house, would you build it the way that you built your business? And they look at me and they say, what do you mean? I said, you built your business by hard work and prayers and you just went out and did it. Just do it. Like the Nike logo.
Yeah, right.
Would you build a house that way? Would you literally just show up with some boards and start nailing it together and hope you have a livable structure? No, nobody would
Yeah,
ever do that. They would think you're crazy. But that's how everybody builds their businesses. So I teach
right.
owners, I said, let's step back. If you were going to build another business tomorrow, if you were going to build, say, a second location, how would you do it? Lay it out. Literally, paint me a picture. Let's Bob Ross this thing. Paint me a picture. Where's the tree going to live? Where's your lifts going to go? Where's the
Yep.
parks room going to go? What's the workflow? How many employees are you going to have? How big is the parking lot? I said, now that's a plan. That's a business plan. Now we can
Yeah.
take that same philosophy, we can use it to grow your business. What's your workflow? Do people really know what good is and what bad is? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, if we're going to rebuild
Oh,
an engine, would you ever let a technician rebuild an engine without the manual that gives them the specs? No. Then why do you let the employees work without specs? They don't know what they're supposed to be doing. Well, they're supposed to
mhm.
fix trucks. Okay, that's great. Well, how do they determine whether they're good at fixing trucks? Do we have metrics? You've got to take the feelings out of things and give them
Yes.
facts. Because employees never know how well they're doing. They never know, hey, am I doing good today? This is a pretty good example of this culture. I knew that I had a perfect culture in my shop when I had a lube tech come to me and say, I can't work here anymore. And I said, well, why do you think that? And she said, because I can no longer uphold the standards that you have for us here. I said, you know what? You're absolutely right. We were going to fire you next week anyways because she just knew she couldn't hit the numbers. She knew that we had gone over it. We'd gone over it. We'd gone over it. We knew what was expected. She knew what was expected. She could measure her performance every single day. And you will find out that you have the best culture you could ever happen when employees come to you and say, I can't work here anymore. I have to see
Wow.
myself out. That's when you know you
Wow.
have a strong culture.
Yeah. No, I haven't had that. I mean, but wow. I always created an atmosphere of people want to be there. And that resonated. Your employees will see how you treat your customers and they're going to mimic you because you're considered dad. Not that you're the dad syndrome, but you're the leader. And they see how you treat those customers and they're going to treat the customers the same way. If they see you walking up to a customer and you treat the customer like you're doing them the favor that they came to your shop, well, guess what? Your employees are going to do the same thing. I can't do that now because it's lunchtime. No, you you are the name of the building. You treat your customers in that way, and everybody else will mimic that. and then make it easier for them to make decisions when you're not there because they know what your expectations are.
Right. And I'm a firm believer that it is so much easier to manage customers' expectations when the customer knows what to expect. So when you
Oh
tell the
yeah,
customer, you bring them in, you check them in, you look at the vehicle, I'd say, you know what, start out in the lot. When you're standing there looking at the car or the truck, don't look at it and be like, oh man, yeah, this thing, I don't know. She's pretty rough. She's 20 years old. No, I would go to a customer and say, hey, tell me about your truck. Because in a semi world,
right,
especially, it's kind of like working on hot rods. They live in these trucks. So they generally have some pride for it because they spend a lot of time in it. And they walk you through and be like, oh, yeah, I just put new
yeah,
tires on it. I mean, instead of drive tires on a truck's $5,000, $6,000.
yeah.
Put a new motor in it 2 years ago, la da da. Needs a transmission, kind of find out. How many people do you know, store owners, that actually teach their service advisors to go out and build value what you do in the parking lot? How do you do that? Oh, this is a great truck. I haven't seen a truck like this in years in such good shape. Somebody pulls in with a 25-year-old pickup. I just don't see these without rust. This thing is awesome. I don't
Right.
care what you do. Build value in that vehicle because when the bill comes, they're not going to say, oh, I can just go to the auction or the dealer and buy another one for the same price what I'm going to spend to fix this. No. I remember I had an old shop car. It was an old Pontiac Grand Am, 300,000 miles on it. I take it to the transmission shop, put a transmission in it. They're like, are you crazy? This car's only worth $3,000. I'm like, I don't care because I can't buy another car that's good for $1,500. Put a transmission in it. He's like, man, I wish every customer thought like you did.
But Peter, not only that, to touch base on what you just said, you were also when you're trying to build into a new customer. I call it the apex. Okay, you went out to that customer's car. You got the customer car, you and the new customer, three people. And if it's a new customer, you now have something to talk about. That's building a relationship
Correct.
because people need something to talk about. Let me share a story with you I had with one of my larger accounts, Walsh Construction. They were a big account of mine back in the day. We hit a bump in the road, and I kind of lost them. Like I can't lose this account because they spent a ton of money here. The project manager, he was an introvert, tough guy to talk to. He was just a tough guy to talk to. And I tried, and I go, listen, let's go out to breakfast. All right, you got to do what you got to do. Suck it up. Put your big boy pants on. Check your ego at the door, because that ain't gonna work. You need to get business. We go out to breakfast. We order our food, and I just can't talk to I Peter. You know me. I can talk to anybody, anywhere, and that's my world, and I can't crack this guy open. So I can't find the commonality. So finally, I asked him about his kids. Hey, how your kids doing? Boom, cracked them open. Then he started talking about the kids' soccer. He's talking about this. He's talking about school. At the end of the day, those three things built a relationship again, and I got him back. So it's the apex. If you have a new customer that comes in, walk out to the car truck with him. Talk. Now you got something to talk about. Hey, is that
Right.
scratch been in the car? Oh yeah, I remember when that guy did that. Oh, that really? You're creating a conversation.
Well, and have
Very
a real
important.
conversation with them because, especially in the world that I've seen, at least I've been able to capitalize this with trucks, is they'll tell you, I'll take them out and walk them out and be like, okay, well, tell me about your truck. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, tell me about well, nobody asked that. I'm like, no, I need to know about your truck. Like, what's the history? What's going on?
Yeah.
What do you use it for? And we call that duty cycle in our industry. Are you doing long haul, short haul? You hauling gravel? You
Oh,
only hauling sand? What do you do with the truck? Because part of that
right,
too comes back to us. When you test a vehicle, you need to test the way they use it.
right.
And you go out there and have a conversation. And then they'll start telling you things like, oh, yeah, I really, we used to use this other place, but they never called us back. We never knew when the
Oh,
truck was going to be done. They would miss
horrible.
deadlines. Okay, so now the customer's told you, look, we care about communication, we care about deadlines, and we care about honesty. Okay, now we know. Maybe they'll tell you something like, we thought the last shop really charged us too much. Well, now
So
you got another battle. So if you go out and have that conversation, they will tell you. Customers are just like trucks. I used to tell mechanics, if you just listen, the truck will tell you what it needs. Just slow down and listen.
right.
Customers are the same way. If you're trying to diagnose a truck, I'll never forget this. We're diagnosing a truck with a low power complaint. We work on this thing for 2 days, spend all this time and money looking into it, say everything's fine, we can't duplicate the problem. The customer
Yeah.
shows up and says, well, I only have a problem when I'm pulling 120,000 pounds. And I'm like, okay, we need to start
Okay.
documenting this stuff.
Right.
And
You
it's
know,
the same
Peter,
way,
let's
you're working on a car. The mom may say, hey, I have to have this van back because I have 4 kids and it's the only way I can transport all the kids at once. You have to think about that. You have to think about the human
agree.
side of it. You're not just taking care of cars and trucks, you're taking care of people.
Yeah,
And
you
let's
are. Put
face it,
yourself in their shoes.
well, and they're not having the best day of their life. When some soccer mom shows up with 4 kids and her car's on the hook because the water pump went out, she's not having a good day.
No, no. You know, another thing I'd like to talk about, delivery. So, I think when you're first getting to know me, I remember walking out to a truck that was in the parking lot, and Peter, there's like fingerprints all over the place and grease on the steering wheel. You want to take the most perfect job that you just did in that guy's truck or car and throw everything out the garbage. Nothing's going to matter anymore because the first thing he's going to do is see grease all over his door handle and then get in his truck and then get grease on his hands. He won't remember any of that. He's going to be so ticked off that he's now got to go out there and clean. Horrible. Delivery is important. Park that truck in front of the door when he gets there. If you know he's coming at 3 o'clock, get it in front of the building. Service.
Well, and
So
maybe even
true.
wash it. And it's kind of like I tell people the way to think about this is think about the last time you went out to dinner and you didn't like your dinner. And what did it take to ruin that dinner? It could be something
Yeah.
as simple as, you go out and have the best meal. The meal is amazing, tastes fine, pricing isn't
Yeah.
bad, but maybe that
Yeah.
waiter or waitress forgot to put your order in, so you were there for an hour.
Oh,
That just ruined that whole experience. And it's the same way with delivering a customer vehicle. You can do all the work right, everything can be perfect, but you're absolutely right. If they get in that car and the steering wheel is covered in grease, oh my
trash.
God, you just ruined the
I,
whole thing because
I, I
perception
would,
is reality.
I would be beside myself. I couldn't handle that. Um, so important. You know, another thing, when in your shop, when you tell Frank or Joe, hey, Frank, bring in this car. Or, hey, when you're done with that, make sure you do it. I don't care what you say, put it in writing. Especially if you're talking to service advisor, because he's got 20 things to remember. That mechanic only has one. Put it in writing. We had a rack system and then we had a messaging system. And that way, if there's a problem, can you prove to me you said that? Oh, yeah, see, it's written down right here. It's in our message, it's in our chat. See, I did tell him, he just didn't do it.
We actually
Oh,
had
I'll just,
we had an internal slogan in our business, and we had posters made, and it was very
yeah,
simple. If it's not in writing, it's not real.
so true. So true. Now, another thing I would do when the phones stop ringing, what do? You pick them up and you make phone calls. You call your old customers. How are you? How was that repair we did last week? Keep it going.
Well,
That
and I think
all builds.
that is an absolute thing that so many shops fall into, and I call it the boom and bust cycle. You get super busy, you're a week or two out, and you forget to do your normal everyday thing. And I think that's something that you have to train yourself, and this is part of building a business system. You need to have
So
your
true.
service advisor spend so much time every day doing follow-up calls or check-in calls, or even I don't care if you make stuff up and say, hey, we updated our system, we're just verifying your details. Are you still a good contact? Is this good email?
Yeah.
Is this good phone number? And you have to allot time for that every day. I do not care how busy you are because I've seen it happen so many times in even my own business. You're super busy. Everybody gets busy. You don't have time to do customer follow up and calls. Bam, 2 weeks
Right.
later, you're there. And then everybody panics and says, oh my God, we're slow. So everybody does what they're supposed to and they get on the phone and they make phone calls and you book up and
Yep.
you're good again. And then bam, you just have this huge repeating boom and bust cycle. And the way to break the cycle is be consistent. And you know what? It's okay to be busy. Meaning it's okay to tell a customer, I'm and I'm not sorry. I was never sorry that I secured the future of myself and my employees by having enough work. But one thing
Yeah.
you never, ever, ever do is never tell a customer no. If your customer calls up and says, hey, it's Friday afternoon, I need a water pump put in my vehicle, absolutely we'll do it Monday morning. Nope, got to have it done today. Absolutely, sir, we'll do it Monday at 8 a.m. Well, nope,
right?
got to have it done today. I tell you what, we open at 8 a.m., but if you're here at 7:30 and drop it off, I'll be here early for you. We'll get you checked in. I guarantee I'll be the first one in the door. And that guy may hang up, and he's going to call 5 other shops. And 5 other shops are going to tell him the same thing, except for they're all going to say no. And which shop do you think they're going to call back? Are they going to call back the 4 other shops that said no? Or is he going to call back the one guy that said yes?
Yes, exactly. So, and it's all those little things, Peter. It really is. You know, do a lot of shops understand profitability of an estimate
No,
where their
because they've
margins
never
should?
established what a good estimate even is. I had it down to simplistic. I could tell every employee in the building what 3 things I needed from them. And we'll use an example. I would tell every one of my store managers, and you know this, Mark, because you worked with me. I only need 3 things. Okay? I need 62% gross profit on every work order. I need $80,000 a week in gross sales. And I
Yeah,
need happy customers. I only need you to do 3 things. And I could break it
yeah,
down that simple with technicians. I would do it in the interview. I'd said, you know what? We only need 3 things from you here. And they would say, only 3? What's that? I said, I need you to be able to read, understand, and follow instructions. If I can hire a tech that can do those 3 things, I could do amazing things with that employee.
it's wow. It's really disturbing. I mean, they really need. I circling back to my break-even calculator. That's what changed everything for me. And I think you see. I showed you parts of it.
Mm-hmm. And I went through a very
And
similar thing. I used a different term. I called it owner's break even because my break even was this is what it costs to keep the lights on. And then I would
yeah,
add 20% because I always had a saying and I was very open to my people about my numbers. Peter's here
yep.
to get paid. So
You know what
whatever
I'm.
happens in this world, Peter's going to get paid. So I
Yeah,
always built in, I took, if my break even was $10,000 a week, my break even that the employees saw was 12,000. Why? Because
right.
I'm here to get paid. I've got multi-millions of dollars wrapped up in this business. I've got my entire life, my livelihood, my family worked there. I've got to get a return on this investment. Otherwise, I should just close the door, sell the thing, and put it in the stock market. I'm guaranteed 5% in the stock market.
So true. So, Peter, what I did, um, you often find a business will one way, shape, or form always find its break even. So if you need to do $50,000, your break even is going to be $50,000 and you're just treading water. What I did every week, now my wife did the books. She took 10% of the gross sales, put it off into a bank account in left hand field, regardless. And you know what? It doesn't matter if that business went to its break even because I'm still putting 10% off into a little kitty somewhere else. We don't always have a 401k, but you know what? You're that 10% is it goes off. That is your money,
Yeah,
regardless.
you've got to
It
have
goes
a
off.
safety net. And I think mine was I was putting $1,100 a week into a savings account. And one of the
Okay.
tricks I used was, and this came about from being with Drive Management Success. It was an idea
Yeah.
that I took away from them. They said, take that, put it in a bank account. Do not have access to the bank account. I did not have an online login for it. I never looked at it.
Right.
It was on a
Yeah.
spreadsheet. Actually, it wasn't on a spreadsheet. It was on my balance sheet. I had an accounting person, a bookkeeper, did everything for me. I didn't even really know how much money was in there because I didn't look at the balance sheet very often. It's not something you look at daily or weekly like a P
Yeah.
and L.
Right.
And I
Right.
forgot about it. And when the person came along to buy my business, I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I could take it or leave it. I had a nest egg, a savings account. The other thing that was
Sure.
amazing about that savings account, if something ever happens, your house gets flooded, maybe your shop gets flooded. I'm telling you
Sure.
what, you may think you have good insurance. Wait until you have a catastrophic problem. I had a small fire in my house, and I thought we had really good insurance. I found out real quick, insurance doesn't cover all the things that happen, right? So if you have a fire in your shop, and let's face it, guys, let's be real. Fire in a shop is a very, very realistic probability. Like
Oh,
it's
of
it's
course.
probably going to happen, not when it's going to happen. And you have a big loss. Even if you have business interruption insurance, you've got to have a nest egg. And that's another example of something you've got to build this in your business. You've got to build
Yeah.
in, I've got to put 5% or 10%, whatever you can do. And it doesn't matter. Make it 1%, make it $10 a week. A little bit now is always better than a lot later,
It's a start. It's
right?
a start. Take 10% of your sales, throw it off to the side. and you will
Forget
you
about it. Forget you even
forget
have
about
that money.
it. It's yours. That's yours. And then there's a parts matrix. They got to be able to find the curve. I mean, you know how to make a parts matrix,
Well,
but
but where's
that'll
the
all
curve? How do you know how much you can charge, Mark?
to the feedback or pushback.
There you go.
You know,
Let's use an
um,
example of that. I'm kind of geek out on things. I love going deep on parts.
so same
Do you
here.
know what a key fob for a Lamborghini costs?
I'm sure it's stupid money. No, I don't.
It's thousands of dollars. How
Uh,
does Lamborghini get by? Oh no, by the way, that key fob is not a Lamborghini key fob. It fits a Volkswagen. You can literally go to Volkswagen and buy a Volkswagen key fob. It's the exact same thing. It is
really?
different because it has a different logo on it. But my point is how can, for the exact same product, just a logo change, can one manufacturer get by with charging $100, another manufacturer get by with charging $1,100? It's the
No,
exact
that's your
same
customer
part.
base. And I'm glad you brought that up because your customer base is huge. I never had problems with my customers. I mean, it was an amazing, but uh, early days of my gas station, when I believe it or not, I tried doing a special on oil changes. 9.95, again, it was a long time ago. 9.95 oil change. And I dragged out every bust out came into that shop. Then you want to charge them tax? Oh no, they would go nuts. You want to try just sell like a $7 wiper blade? Forget about it. So you got all the bottom feeders when you sell your services too cheap. And then you're going to spend way too much time on a bottom feeder. Probably 80% of your time is spent on bottom feeders who equate to maybe 5% of your business. Well, you
Yeah,
know
they
what? I
take
got
up the
customers.
most. They take up the most of your
Yeah.
time too.
Spend your money and your time on the customers who appreciate your service. Don't cater to the one person who came in one time for an oil change and they didn't want a wiper blade. And they're not your customer. A customer, when you validate, a customer becomes a customer. When he visits you maybe 3, 4 times, a customer isn't your customer. He's a potential customer when he visits you the first time, but he becomes a real customer after he visits you three or four.
Right. I think a good
So,
point to that is I can actually put that into value. First of all, you need to take the top 20% of your customer base and spend 80% of your time figuring out how do I get
yeah,
more of that. The second thing is let's use some simple math. Going back to fear. Most shop owners I work with, I can't raise my rates. If I raise my rates, so and so down the road will get all my business. I said, look, let's do some simple math. If you raise your rates by 10%, and we're just going to look at labor rate. You raise your labor rate by 10%, right? You go from $100 to $110 an hour. Even if you lose 2% of your customers, you're still 4% ahead on gross sales.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
It's
yeah.
amazing. People don't understand numbers. Like they don't look at it that way. Everything is a ratio. And it's okay because you know what you'll find out? That 2% of customers that you just lost were the ones that your technicians didn't want to work on their vehicles, your service advisors didn't want to take their phone call, and nobody wanted to deal with them.
Yeah. Oh my God. I had a customer one time. he he swore when we changed oil on his car, we swapped out one of his tires with a different tire. Yeah, well, it was an old tire. And he was cussing me up down. He says I'm a eventually he did call me back and apologize. I remember the guy, Mark, I gotta stop smoking that dope. I'm sorry, is really what he said. But these are not the customers you want.
They're not.
Keep your good customers.
But
You
here's
know?
another thing, too, talking about fear. Do not be afraid if your customers leave. Some of the most powerful things I've ever had happen to me owning a shop was when my customers left. Because perspective is a very powerful thing. I had a customer that he left and went to another shop, actually a competitor of mine that I know well.
Yeah.
I've interviewed him now a couple of times. And he went to them because they had a night shift. And they had promised, hey, we'll get this job done, no problem, in and out. A week later, the truck's still there.
Mm.
So the customer comes back. Oddly enough, the same customer, which was a good friend of mine, even to this day, was in my wedding. At one point, we got so busy that we had to figure out we had to figure out who we were going to keep working with because we just couldn't keep up. And this is, I think, during COVID, when the world was crazy. And I called him up and said, hey, I got to have a conversation with you. We have now found out that we have more customers than we have technicians to work on their equipment. And so we're reevaluating which customers we're going to keep. And he says, well, what does that mean? Does that mean you're not going to keep me? I said, no, unfortunately, we're just going to not work on your stuff anymore. We just don't have the capacity to continue to service you. And he's like, well, why? What's going on? And I had to be frank with him. I said, because nobody likes you. I said, you're mean to everybody. You're demanding. You treat people like crap. You have unrealistic expectations of when your stuff should get done. We just don't want to work with you anymore. And he's like, I don't understand. And this light bulb goes off in my head. And I'm like, you know what? We need to have hard conversations with customers when they do things. Long story short, this guy came in, spent 2 hours apologizing to everybody in the building. He bought the entire shop lunch, had it catered in, was kissing butt. And he's actually been a pretty good customer since then. Like, sometimes I think you just need to have some realignment. I call it an attitude check. Sometimes you literally just have to do that with customers and sit down and say, we're going to have an alignment meeting. What's that mean? I need you to understand what our position is and the things that you've done with us. And I'm sorry, but if you bring me a truck at 6 o'clock in the morning, you can't expect my guys to clock in an hour early to fix your flat tire. Like, that's not going to happen, man. Well, they're already there. It doesn't matter. We're not going to do it. You just can't. You have to have standards, and you have to expect things from vendors and customers and employees. And if you can't have those hard conversations and just be real with them, talk to him. And maybe it was different for me because this guy was kind of a friend, but in some ways it was harder because, you have to have that really clean line between employee or friendship and customers. But stop living in fear.
Yeah, friends and family, they can bury us. You got to find a nice balance there, you know. Another thing, which I was really proficient on, inspections. They all had to fill out a form, that way the customer can't say, well, you didn't tell me that. Why didn't you tell me that when I was here? Well,
right.
We did.
Even if the shop thinks I don't have time for it, or a lot of automotive shops think, well, we're just going to get the reputation of trying to nickel and dime people. Let's put it this way. If your grandmother came in there with that car, or your wife's car that had your kids in it, would you want someone to tell them that their tires are bald?
Right.
Yeah, wouldn't you want to know that? Like, you're not making stuff up. Like, I used to tell my employees, look, I understand that you came from XYZ shop and they didn't do it this way. But I'm telling you right now, we're not making stuff up. I'm never going to ask you to suggest something it doesn't need. And let's face it, there's not a single vehicle out there on the road that doesn't have something going on with it that the customer or the owner of it should know about. Yeah, okay, right. You're starting to have a leak, an oil leak on your oil pan. Okay, that's fine. It's not there yet, but at least they can start budgeting for it and say, hey, you don't have to do this today. Just, I wanted you to know this is what's coming.
Right. So true. So true.
I think this is a good place to stop, Mark. I mean, we have over an hour of video here, and I don't want to take your whole day up.
That's fine. And to wrap things up, Peter, when you have a business, focus and point high. You may not get to exactly where you want to go, but you got a direction. Stay focused.
Yeah, I think some people, the analogy I give to that is when you go on vacation, you start with the destination in mind. So if we're all going to go to Florida, we know we're going to Florida. We don't get in the car and all have a conversation as we're driving down the road, where are we going? But so many businesses run that way. So if you start with the end in mind and say, this is what I want to build, then you build, this is how we're going to do it. This is why we do it. If you build all that stuff, it's okay. As long as you can see the mountaintop, you can always keep walking towards it. Even if you get lost, it's okay. Just turn around, look at the mountain, start walking back in that direction again. And business is the same way. It's okay if you lose your way. It's okay if you have a bad month. It's okay if you lose your key employees.
You still have a direction you know you want to go.
That's right. Just keep looking for the top of the mountain and walking that way, and everything will be okay.
Right. Perfect.
Thanks, Mark, for being on today. We covered a lot of topics. Fear in how you run your business and how you can't let it rule the business. It's okay to have fear, but don't let it control you. We talked about, dealing with customers and how to manage that customer relationship, and even how to train some of your employees to deal with that. And the other thing is we dove into some of the financials, and we talked about how you have to know your numbers and how that's the key to success in business.
All right, Peter, I think we did good. A lot of content we covered. I like the vibration we had going back and forth.
Thanks for being on with us today, Mark.
All right, enjoy your day. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks.